Hello. Happy Wednesday. Wednesday is considered to be our methodology day. So let's get started. Today is our second input, and it's all about reading, ladies, how to spice up reading, about different types of activities that you can take and bring in your classroom. And I'll also briefly tell you about different types of texts in terms of teaching. All right, so first things first, I think it's a well-known fact that almost all the lessons that we conduct require learners to read at some point. We may make them read to kickstart a discussion or to focus on a particular grammar item or maybe to introduce some lexes, right? But sometimes we also build the whole class, the whole lesson around reading in order to develop our students' reading skills. No matter what's the purpose, we use different types of texts for these purposes, such as blog posts, articles, tweets, infographics, memes, by the way, Instagram stories, authentic articles, tickets, banners, menus, course books, of course. So these are all the texts that we can use. And as you can see, it's not only articles. There are a lot of texts that we can actually bring into the classroom. Now, the difficulty here, I suppose, is how to choose a text, how to choose a relevant text. And there are certain points that I think we can consider when choosing a text. First of all, the relevance. Yes, is it relevant for my students' interests and needs and purpose and our module overall our overall topic of discussion, right? The second point is the level. Obviously, yes, I'm personally guilty. I often take the texts, for example, for my big two group, which are not quite appropriate for them in terms of language. And then I have to grade these texts because they are usually over complicated for them. So I have to simplify the texts for them. The third point is about vocabulary and grammar. Do we have any interesting vocabulary and grammar items that we can explore with our students? The fourth one is novelty. And I wouldn't personally rely on this point a lot because what is obvious for you is not always obvious for other people, right? But anyway, it is cool if you bring some, if you sparkle your lesson with some novelty and bring something new and exciting, because this makes learning interesting. Then achievable challenge. I think it's connected with the level here, with this point. So the texts should be appropriate for your students, but they should be as well challengeable, but the challenge should be achievable. Okay, I hope you've got the idea. And attractive presentation, again, this is the last point here, definitely not the most important thing to consider, but it's rather cool if your texts are visually attractive. Okay, so this is how we choose the text, what to consider, and types of texts that you should be familiar with. Now, there is another system and other text types in terms of teaching, which is Taylor, Tavy, and TASP, I suppose. Let me just zoom in. So we can consider texts when we are talking about the purpose. Yes, why do we use a particular text? Some texts can be used as a linguistic object, and this is going to be Taylor, right? So this is, in this approach, reading text is used purely for language points. So we are fishing out for the grammatical items, our vocabulary items, right? So this is like mining the text for things that we would like to teach. And we do not care about the context a lot here. What we need is language in this particular text. Just some examples of tasks for you to grasp the idea. For example, when you ask your students to find and underline all the words which are which have to do with crime or any other topic at all, right? Or when we are focusing on a particular chunk that we found in the text, and then we drill this chunk, okay? So this is going to be text as a linguistic object. Okay, now the second type of text is text as a vehicle for information. This is when text is being used to develop the strategies that learners need to deploy to unlock the writer's meaning and attitudes. In other words, this is when we read and discuss the text. Yes, what we need is to grasp the idea of the text. This is when we are developing the cognitive strategies, yes, for learners to be able to independently work with the text further on. Some activities that are represented by this type of the text would be predicting the content, discussing questions, making things like marking things in the text that they know or never heard of before, answering these comprehension questions, summarizing. So all the activities that we are familiar with and all the activities that we usually use relying on our frameworks, this is like when we use text as a vehicle for information. And the last thing here is text as a springboard for production. And this means using a text as a springboard for another task, usually a reading or writing task. For example, when we are doing a follow-up role play or discussing issues raised by the text or having a debate or writing a similar text or writing to the author of the text, right? So this is using text as a springboard for production. And actually, surprise, surprise, when we mix all of these types, Taylor, Tavy, and TSP, we get a typical reading lesson. So one text can actually represent all of these types. You see what I mean? Sometimes not. Sometimes we need different texts for these types. But sometimes one text can represent and can incorporate all of these types because we use it for different purposes throughout the lesson. So I have decided to build this whole input around these types because I think that activities that I will be talking about, they perfectly fit, certain categories. And that's just going to be more structured for us. Okay, so our first type is Taylor. Again, just a kind reminder, this is a text as a linguistic object. aka bite-sized tasks to mine the text for language items. Let me share a couple of activities. So first things first, the activity that we have tried with you in our class. This is translate plus find in the text plus complete the tasks. Remember, I first asked you to translate certain sentences. Then we found these similar phrases in the text. And then we had some follow-up tasks such as paraphrase or finish the sentences with your own ideas, right? These follow-up tasks may vary. You can also include gap fills, finishing the prompts, matching the sentences using, for example, word wall, yes, or discussing gap questions. But the idea is that you make it really bite-sized and you come up with several types of activities to make the new language stick. Okay, another variation, very similar, but just slightly different, is definitions plus shades of meaning plus the tasks. So what we did in this class with my students, I asked them to read the post by a famous psychologist, Adam Grant, maybe you know him. First, they had to discuss, to read the posts and discuss whether they agree with his ideas. Then I have decided to work with certain vocabulary items from these posts. And these vary, one second. So these words, they were hidden at first, just like this. And first things first, I asked my students to read the definitions and find these very vocabulary items in the posts. Okay, we found the words. Then we discussed different contexts that we can use these words in. Yes, for example, the word fluctuate can be used in the economy, emotional context, and also environment. Same with fleeting, yes, same with complacency. So we discussed these shades of meaning in different contexts that we can use these words in. And then it was all followed by just simple gap fill and similar, just like we did, I suppose. Yeah, similar prompts. And they had to finish these prompts with their own ideas. Just a variation for you. Okay, and another variation. Again, you see, we had bite-sized lesson. We also read the text, just like paragraphs from the text, and then students had to listen to the definitions. So I voiced them. And if you are curious, I can give you the AI tool that you can use to voice definitions or anything that you want to voice. So they had to listen to the definitions, then find these definitions in the text, and then again finish the prompts. Or here they had to replace phrases in bold with synonymic ones from the text. You see, so I used these phrases in a bit of a different context, and I asked my students to find similar phrases in the text. Okay. Cool. For example, just an example, the idea of a magic love pill appeared to click with the audience. So click with, resonate with. This is what we had in the text to give them more synonyms. Okay. Now, another type of task here is going to be the linguistic guess. And this is also an activity that we tried with you, easy breezy. You just take a paragraph and you probably presume that your students are familiar with certain words or they are C3 level like you are, ladies. And you may just gap certain phrases and ask your students to guess what are the phrases. And you may add certain activities to practice these phrases further. I haven't in this lesson, but you may. And yeah, this is about linguistic guess. And another one, which I think also suit the category of a linguistic guess, it is about Lego blocks matching. And I'm just in love with this activity. The credit goes to Yulia Kumichova. And this is awesome. So we read certain paragraph, certain sentences. And this is actually one paragraph. You see, 1 second, let me just show you. So this is a part of a bigger paragraph. And our task was to fill in the gap, but just the way it's all presented, it is so engaging that you have to stack the Lego blocks, you see, in the gaps, and it's rather unusual, I believe. So for example, society has equated being busy with being productive. And okay, you're thinking, what should I put there? So probably has long equated and also mistakenly equated being rude, being busy with being productive. Again, we were familiar with some of these phrases before. We studied some of them before, like flawed, for example, and warped and ingrained, yes, in our class. But some of them were new, like perpetuated. I have a problem with this word, perpetuated. And then we discussed these phrases, and as far as I remember, we completed a couple of more activities further on. So beautiful activity, I love it. Okay, one more thing to consider is let your students mind the text instead of you. And this is, of course, mostly suitable for high-level students. But you can try, why not trying it with your intermediate students as well? I think it might well work. So this is the task that I created for my students. I asked them, after we've read the text, I asked them to choose one phrase from the article that they want to teach us. Again, for me, of course, I do understand that I'm cheating because I'm teaching teachers, and that's easy for them to come up with the definitions. They are like, professionals here, found the definition, found the examples. For students who are not teachers, that's going to be more complicated. But again, this is about learning skills. And this is how we're teaching them to learn, which is a valuable skill. So why not trying this activity? So I asked them, to choose one phrase and then to give a definition, examples, shades of meaning maybe, and a task. There was an example, and this is what my students came up with. You see, like just one word, example, and then a teeny tiny task, which mostly were like sentences to complete or discussion questions. Okay, and this is just another variation. I also put just the way I presented it, yes. Also choosing 2 vocabulary items and exploring the meaning and then creating the task over here, okay? Cool, so that's it. As for the first type of text, just a reminder, let me bring us back. It was about Taylor, so exploiting the text as a linguistic object. And there are some activities that you can probably use. Let me know if you like any of those. Okay, the second type of text, which is TAVI, text as a vehicle for information. Now, sorry if that sounds like a broken record, but I have to mention that this is all about well-known strategies that we want our students to develop, such as skimming, scanning, and intensive reading. Yes, which is just a reminder, skimming is looking only for the general or main ideas. Here are some activities that we may try, such as reading the title, reading the first paragraph, reading the first line, which is an interesting activity, actually. There are some tasks that seem so obvious that they slip under your radar and then you never use them, but they are, however obvious they're actually nice. And maybe reading the last paragraph. Scanning is reading in order to find specific information, such as figures or names. So we may create some content-specific questions. We may attract our students' attention to the keywords, or maybe read aloud the beginning of a sentence and ask our students to finish it, or to find this sentence in the text, suitable for lower level students. And intensive reading, yes, for full understanding of usually a short text. This is where our imagination may go wild. We may create some synonym matching exercise, as I told you before, right? We may have these multiple choice exercises, true, false, spot the error, all the buzz. Okay, now let me share some of my favorite activities which perfectly fit in this type of the text. If we presume text as I always forget, 1 second, let me get back, as a vehicle for information. Yes, as a vehicle for information. Okay, the first one here is the opinion gallery. Adorable activity, which would work with almost any type of the text. So what you do is you may, obviously you read the article, or the text yourself before, and you may fish out for the interesting ideas from this article and then create statements, and then ask your students to either agree or disagree with these statements as the first step to prepare your students for further reading. Okay, the second task here, we didn't have time, unfortunately, to finish the text last time, my poor time management. But again, a familiar task, I suppose, to look at the phrases and predict the context. Choose the phrases that speak for themselves, that may actually help your students guess the context. Another task that I love, and it's called summary prediction. So what you do for this task is you may ask a fellow colleague or a friend to read the article before the class and record a summary of this article for your students. Or alternatively, you may ask them to record their not the feedback, what's the word? To record their, like, what they think, sorry, I lost the word, what they think about the text. And then give your students practice predicting both the context and the structure maybe of a reading text. So you let your students listen to the pre-recorded summary or opinion about the text, and share their own opinions or share their own guesses what the text is going to be about. Okay, and another one here is introduce the topic using a short video. For example, in this lesson, we read a text about emotions in ads. So before that, I showed my students a video about spheres that capitalize on our emotions a lot, and we discussed a couple of follow-up questions, and then they kind of had to guess what is the topic of our discussion. And here we were talking about male gaze, and male gaze is an overcomplicated topic. I would say it's quite difficult to talk about it, not only in English, in your second language, but in your first language as well. So in order to prepare my students for such a deep conversation, I let them watch the definition of male gaze. We discussed it a little bit. We discussed some examples of such behavior in our life, and then only after that we read the text itself. Okay, here we go. Now, what are some activities? These were the activities that you can use before reading. Now, what are the activities that you can use while reading? Awesome activities that I hope you've tried, but if you haven't, please do. Role reading. This is when you give your students a particular role, such as predictor, questioner, clarifier, and summarizer. And you read the text all together, usually. If you have big groups, like 10 people in a group, of course, you would probably put them in smaller groups and give them the roles. But if you are teaching smaller groups, that would work wonders. If you are teaching individuals, that could also work. What I do with individuals, we take 2 roles. For example, I take predictor and questioner. They take clarifier and summarizer. And we just yeah, that's a little bit weird, I would say, but still fun, and it still works. So what you do, the idea, first, the predictor starts. The predictor has like 30 seconds to look through the text and predict the context. Or maybe you're gonna show them just the name of the heading of the text. May also work. Then all the students read this first part of the text. Then the questioner creates some questions based on the text and asks their questions. Other class members answer the questions. Then the clarifier asks some follow-up questions, or the clarifier is keeps silent while the discussion is going, and then after the discussion is over, they may clarify certain points. And then the summarizer goes last, and they summarize the text in 1 sentence probably. And then you start again. So you do the same procedure for as many paragraphs as you have in your text. This is so engaging, though it is, of course, quite a process. So your students should be involved in the class, but I'm just loving this activity. Okay, one more is text annotations, of course. Yes, again, you may change these prompts here. The idea is that you ask your students to react while they are reading, to ask your students to annotate the text while they are reading. I have certain reactions here. This sounds persuasive. I have doubts about that. I can relate, or I beg to disagree. We read a chapter from this book, Atomic Habits. And well, basically, my students had to agree or disagree, but in a bit of a different form. And they had to react to the text while reading, and then they compared their reactions and discussed, and it always sparks a discussion. A beautiful discussion and a debate, even, I would say, sometimes. Depends on the text. Okay, doc. And a couple of activities that you can do after reading. The first one here is the QA session. This activity is from Off the Page book. I cannot recommend this book, but there are some cool activities that you may want to explore. So this is one of them. What you do is you ask your students to create questions about the text to give to another group. This would be especially effective if you're a teaching group and you split your students in 2 different groups, and they play against each other and create very thought-provoking questions to each other. And you give them some prompts, maybe what could their questions be about, like the opinion of the writer, something that is not clearly stated but relevant, and evaluation of a certain point or a possible result of something. So yeah, you give them some food for thoughts, and they come up with their questions. For example, these are the questions that my students created. I think we were talking about money. Yeah, I suppose. Okay, so this is the activity. Again, always sparks a discussion. Another thing, again, I was planning to complete this one with you, and this is the reflection exercise. I would say again, it's from the Ideas in Action book, Activities for Alternative Assessment, a beautiful series of book, actually. So the activity is called text to self, text to text, and text to word. The whole idea is to let your students look at the text from the different perspectives, right? For example, you would probably put them in the breakout rooms or let them work as one big group in the open class, or if it's individual learner, even better, you just stay with the learner and you look at the text from different angles, right? So text to self, what does it remind me of my life? Has something like this ever happened to me? How did I feel when I was reading this text? So you see, you incorporate different even like cognitive levels here, I would say. The next category is text to text. What does it remind me of another in another text that I have read before? How is this text different from the other things I've read, or from the other things that I've read? And the last category is text to word. Do I see people doing this in the course of my daily life? How does this text relate to what I've studied in other subjects? So you find these interconnections, you see. And how do I think I will be willing to do this? Again, highly recommended. A very effective activity. And one more activity that I personally, I've never tried this one, but I want to, so I'm sharing this one with you. I hope it is effective because it was Anastasia Volodina's idea. It's called silent discussion. So basically what you do, you pose a question based on the text and you ask your students to answer this question in a written form, for example, on a sticky note, yeah, if you're using Miro. And then you create pairs and you ask students to reply to their partner, but also in a written form. So this is the way you practice writing, and you also you let your students share their opinions, but in a bit of an unusual form, not just like speaking, but discussing very same things, but in a written form. Why not? Why not? And I would probably imagine this being used in an offline classroom. I think it should be rather effective in the offline classroom as well. I will give it a go and let you know. Okay, and now this is it as for text as a vehicle. And we have the last type of text, which is TAVI, text as a springboard for production. There are just a couple of activities that I want to share. I think some of these activities may also fit in that category, but I have a couple of more. Here's my top, my personal top is model paragraph writing. I'm loving it. So what you do here is you choose a paragraph from a book. You highlight some structures that build the paragraph sort of, and you ask your students to follow this pattern to write their own paragraph. So these are some of the structures that I have chosen. Yes, certainly we are capable of doing very hard things. The problem is that some days, and some days, and then on the tough days, it's crucial to blah, blah, blah. Yes, and I asked my students to create an absolutely different text. This is what they came up with. So this original text, it was about challenges, yeah, and powering through difficulties. And my student created a text about producing creative ideas or about performing spells, the Harry Potter style. Amazing. So model paragraph writing, 100% yes. And one more thing, easy breezy, yet for some reason, students do not like it very much. It's called 7-word summaries. And I know the reason, because you feel limited, especially high-level students. They hate it. They are like, want to write more. But no, there are certain limitations. So you ask your students to summarize the text in just 7 words and then change the partners. This is a trick. You may not use it, but you may try as well. Then you may change the partners and ask them to rephrase their partner's summary in 8 words. For example, dreams are a representation of our suppressed thoughts. That was the original summary. And the edited one is dreams are a genuine representation of our suppressed thoughts. I know it might be like in some articles, but doesn't really matter. The idea is that this is a cool strategy for exams, I suppose, as well, to let your students feel the language sort of, you see, and how they can play around with that and how they can change the meaning, add in just one word, maybe. So that's exciting stuff. Okay, doc, ladies, that's actually it as for reading activities that I wanted to share with you. I want you to share in our chat a new activities that you want to try in your class and activities that you used before and it worked wonders. And maybe you have something else. Maybe my activities are not enough and you would like to share an additional activities that you want to share with us, something that was just chef's kiss and you just feel like sharing. Also, do not forget to reflect. Remember, you have your diary for the methodology takeaways. It's all on Notion, so you can write down the key ideas, the ideas that you want to implement, and the summary of my talk today. Thank you very much for being active listeners. And I'm waiting for your reflections in our chat. Thank you and see you on Friday very, very soon. Bye bye, ladies.